how you can do awesome things with AWS CloudFormation. Now, this talk is not going to be purely about AWS or purely about AWS CloudFormation or even infrastructure as code. No, this talk is actually about you. Yes, you. The lovely developer, the engineer, the DevOps engineer, system administrator, SRE, whatever you like to call yourself. You all are doing something with technology, right? Be that writing code, be that provisioning servers, be that by setting up pipelines. And the entire goal of infrastructure as code and CloudFormation in general is to help you do that more easily. One of the great things about us, the developers and engineers, is that we are lazy, right? We want to make things more automated. We want to make things more easy for us so we don't have to click and type 100 things to do things over and over again, right? So in comes this wonderful thing that some, again, engineer developed called infrastructure as code. And infrastructure as code in general helps you to do amazing things, right? Imagine this. Friday afternoon, you're sitting in your office. It's 3 p.m. Somebody tells you, hey, for the weekend, we need a replication of the production environment to staging. Do you like that? Do you like staying on a Friday afternoon, just clickety-clicking, creating your a replica of your production environment to staging? No, you don't like that, right? Or let's say somebody makes a change on a Friday afternoon in infrastructure and something's broke. How do you know what change has been made? How can you revert easily to it? You don't want to do that manually. So today we're going to talk about infrastructure as code, a framework on top of AWS called AWS CloudFormation that helps you do infrastructure as code. And how does that benefit you? I promise I don't have a lot of slides. I have demos. I'm going to be showing you some code and we're going to be doing things. Before we continue, I want to do something here. So let's open up a terminal here. And I'm going to type a little thing here. It doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it right now. Oops, not that one. Source. I need to source my ZSH file, right? ZSH. All right, does this work? Oh, no, it's hello. Hello, yes, I changed the name. Hello, Kiev, right? Come on. No, hello, Ukraine? Wait, give me a moment. Changing ZSH files is hello Ukraine. Hell Ukraine. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Hell Ukraine. All right, so let's leave that in, and I'm gonna come back to that later on. All right, so let's answer the first question here. What is infrastructure as code? I assume that a lot of you have heard of this or are using it, or if you have not used it, welcome. I'm gonna enlighten you today about something. So in the old days, the way you would provision your hardware servers, your things in data centers, there was a lot of clicking involved. There was a lot of racking and stacking. There was cabling. And actually a long time ago, I used to be something that's called a server provisioning administrator. And that is something, my job was basically to provision operating systems on big old boxes sitting in a data center somewhere far, far away. And I would get like 300 servers to provision. Somebody would rack them and stack them and put them in data centers, do all of that stuff. And I would have to do all the operating system configuration, installation of the operating system. You know, you take your favorite Java-based web interface for your remote administration, you mount an ISO file and go through the operating system installation. It takes me 6 months to do like 300 servers. That's by no means fun. So things have evolved, right? How long does it take you to deploy 300 servers on top of AWS, right? You click a bunch of buttons, you get a server, voila, right? Pretty simple. It's much, much faster than having somebody to do it like that. However, think of what is the cloud. How do you interact with the cloud? You have this wonderful web interface where you go clickety-click there, right? And then it creates infrastructure for you. That's amazing, right? But that actually means That's all an API somewhere, right? When you click a button on the web interface, some API somewhere is being called. So why click if you can just call an API? Well, you can run your bash scripts, your PowerShell scripts, or whatever, and make the call to those APIs. But actually, there's a better way. There's a better way we do things now. So we do it actually through APIs, but we do it through code, right? So we no longer provision infrastructure by putting stuff in a data center. We no longer provision infrastructure by clicking it to an extent. We write it in code. We write it in code, right? So this is what I'm going to be talking about. How does this code, or not this exact code, but how does code in infrastructure provisioning help you? Why is this important, right? Instead of clicking, why don't you just run a piece of code? So a couple of things. Why is this good? Why is infrastructure as code interesting, and why should you be using it? Number one, it is repeatable and very much predictable. I mentioned the examples of like creating a server, creating it 500 times. Even if it takes you 7 seconds to click, imagine how long does it take you to do it 300 times. So being, able to repeat what you're doing very easily is key. Other thing, because it's a code, it's a piece of code. You can use already existing developer tooling within your tool chain to actually deploy and manage infrastructure, right? So instead of having somebody just click and provision and configure manually, you can have a pipeline do that for you. You can version control your infrastructure, basically store your infrastructure as code in a Git repository and just have different versions of code. That somebody who broke your infrastructure, you can actually see what they did to break the infrastructure. And also you can test against the code and a whole lot of things. And also replicating. Yeah. Have you ever had to replicate a production environment into staging, development, testing, whatever, right? It's never the same. It is literally never the same if you do it manually. So doing it in infrastructure as code, you can basically just rerun your code, run it again with different set of parameters, and you can just have it another copy of the same thing, which is wonderful. And another thing I don't have here defined, but one of the things that is very important when it comes to infrastructure as code, especially for you playing around, testing things, it's so easy to delete things, right? Imagine you have a fresh new account and you want to spin up a web server with all the bells and whistles so you can play with things. You do that all manually. It takes, a couple of minutes, an hour, whatever, and then you're done. And then you forget to delete things. Or you delete things, but you don't delete everything. And you have all of these tails. You want to make sure that you want to clean up your account once you're done. Infrastructure as code does that. As easy as you provision it, you can delete it as well. So that's a really fun thing. Now, let me get to one thing now. You may be wondering, who is this bald person here and why is he yelling at me through the camera? Let me introduce myself. My name is Darko Meszaros. I am a developer in heart, right? I've been something that used to be called a systems administrator, right? So I've grew up with computers. I've been passionate about them my whole life. I love code. I love developing. I am in love with the cloud. And one of the things I love to do is I like to transfer that knowledge, the technology, all the cool and nifty stuff that will make your days easier. I like to do that. I like to teach you. I like to share that knowledge with you. I also happen to work for Amazon Web Services as a developer advocate, right? I'm originally Serbian, hence the different types of spelling my name. So Darko Meszaros, as you can see. I'm based in Berlin. And if you want more of this bald goodness, check out the social media links down there. I do some video Twitch stuff as well. So I would love to connect with you as well. Okay, so now let's move on. We've discussed what is infrastructure as code. But what is AWS CloudFormation? What does this have to do? Well, AWS CloudFormation is a framework. It's a way to provision infrastructure on top of AWS, so Amazon Web Services, through code, right? Simple as that. It basically is a form of defining this infrastructure through your favorite YAML or JSON syntaxes. And the code looks like this, right? So you define your resources, you define how those things are configured. So instead of going on a console and clicking a button, hey, launch an EC2 instance, this will be the AMI, this will be the instance size, this will be the volumes, whatever. You can all write it down in this lovely little description file here, right? It's just a YAML file here that describes how things should look. And then you whisk this code off to AWS, and you let AWS handle it for you. That's it, right? CloudFormation handles all the provisioning, all the API calls need to be run, right? So that's the whole difference here. You may say, well, Darko, I have a whole bunch of Python and Bash scripts that do this for me. They just call the AWS API to create me instances. Yeah, fair, power to you, right? But how do you handle if an instance fails? How do you handle deletions? How do you handle multiple multiple instances of the same resource? How do you handle throttling, whatever, right? All of that is being handled by CloudFormation. So you don't have to worry. You just tell it, hey, I need an EC2 instance. Please provision me an EC2 instance. And then CloudFormation will do it for you. So when we actually look at how CloudFormation code looks like, there's a bunch of things, right, to a template. If you have never written a template, we'll go through that in a second. But ultimately, the main part of a template is the part where you actually define your resources. So this is the main part of your template, right? The resources are the things that are going to be creating your actual resources on top of the cloud. You can do parameters and mappings to kind of augment your template as well. So like, for example, instead of having hard-coded instance sizes or hard-coded, user keys or whatnot, you can just use parameters and to make your templates a bit more agnostic. And you can do some even more logical things like conditions, where you say, hey, if instance A is being created, do not create instance B, right? So those kind of things. And outputs are just your fancy way of saying, hey, once you have finished my template, please let me know what the URL is, so I do not have to go dig through code, right? So that being said, let's actually head off and see how this actually works in action, right? So let's have a look at some code instead of me just yelling at you like this. Switching over to something here, right here. So first off, let's do something here. Let's actually go and create an EC2 instance, just your standard EC2 instance like you would do it from the console, right? So you open up your web console, you go to EC2, then you go and say, launch an instance. That's 3 clicks already. 4 clicks, you select the instance size here, right? T2 micro is fine. That's 5 clicks. I can use the default networking here. I don't have to worry about any of the stuff here. Click add storage, that's 6 clicks. Storage is fine, that's 7 clicks. Configuring security groups, 8 clicks. I will actually select an existing user group, that's 9. Picking another one here, I have it here, default, 10, 11, 12, 13 clicks to launch an instance. Now, 13 clicks is not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it can get a lot, right? Especially for more complex things. Now, launching an EC2 instance is simple. But if you want to do something more complex, like launch a fully fledged load balanced web server cluster, that may take a lot more clicks. So how do you actually launch an EC2 instance through the power of AWS CloudFormation? So let's go ahead and open up our terminal and do some code, right? Let's actually write a template that will create an EC2 instance for us, okay? So template.yaml. All right, so I'm going to be creating an EC2 instance here that's going to be, I'm going to create a template here that's going to launch our EC2 instance, right? Okay, so first off, what do we need to do for our template? We need to add a couple of metadata strings and a description of our template, right? So let's add the template format version and just a description of what this template is. Descriptions are important. What next? We can go now and just create the instance, just define the instance itself, but let's be smart about this. Let's introduce parameters. Remember I told you parameters are the things that can help you make changes to your template and reuse it more easily. So let's add 2 parameters. Let's add a parameter for the instance size, right? So let's say I want to be able to pick which instance size I want to launch, right? So in this case, we've created a parameter that says, hey, you can pick from these two types of instances, T2, T3 micro and T3 small. This gives the user, the end user of this template, the ability to basically pick which instance size they want to launch. Let's set up an SSH key for our instance because we want to be able to SSH to our instance. I will add a new parameter here called key pair, and this basically just tells us, hey, you have the ability to pick a key pair during the launch of this template. Wonderful. Now, let's do something more advanced. Let's say you want to take this template and launch it in your favorite EU West region, right? And then you want to launch this in America, in US East 1. One of the problems when dealing with EC2 instances, for example, is that the AMI, Amazon Machine Image, is different in different regions. Now you can do a parameter here and say like, oh, please enter the AMI ID, and every time you launch a template, just to make sure you're using the correct AMI ID. Or you can be smart about it, and you can use something called mappings. Mappings are a wonderful way to create like a way to map a specific value to something else. For example, if I'm launching an EC2 instance in the US West 2 region, if I would be launching this template in the US West 2 region, it will actually pick this specific AMI ID for that instance. If I'm launching it in the EU West 1 region, it would use this one. It will automatically deduce it within my template. And finally, the most important part of our template, the actual instance itself. So this, I'm now creating a resource called my EC2 instance, and it's simple. It's creating an EC2 instance with a bunch of properties. And I'll go over details what these things are. So we just kind of have a look at what are we looking at right now. Okay, so what do we have here? I mentioned this thing here. This thing is our, these are our mappings, right? So these are the ways we are deploying our, this is the way we are determining which AMI to be used. Now, within the actual EC2 instance resource, so within here, right, we have a couple of things we have defined. Number one, the type, the resource, right? This is where we define, hey, this is the resource type we're creating, right? We are gonna create an EC2 instance in this case. If we're creating a RDS database, we would choose AWS : RDS : database, right? Or whatever. There's an amazing amount of documentation about this that you can check out, right? So this is the definition of the actual resource. Next, we go into properties. Properties are, well, properties. This is where you define the settings of the resources you're about to create. In our case, we have, for example, the image ID, right? This is the AMI, these things here, right? This is where we pick that up. How do we pick that up? Well, we use the function called find and map. This is an intrinsic function geared toward CloudFormation, where it uses this function to take stuff out of this map here, and then basically just say, hey, use this map, get the current region. So CloudFormation will actually query which is the current region, and then just pass it this parameter. This is just architecture type, right? But basically then it will combine this, and that will output, for example, this, if we are running it in the EU West 1 region. And finally, the instance type. So this thing here, this is basically defining which is going to be the instance size. Now we could hard code here, right? You know, we can do like T3 micro and just, you know, do those things. But that's not a solution. We created these things called parameters on top. So how do we do that? We basically tell it, hey, instance type, please reference the instance type parameter. And the instance type parameter is the one on top. That's it. So once we launch the template, it's going to basically query the parameters being set, and it's going to use one of those parameters here as the instance size. Okay, with that being said, let's actually clear this all up and launch this this entire thing. So let's go back to this thing. Instead of clicking a bunch of times on this side, let's go to CloudFormation. And we're going to actually launch a template that's going to be creating this resource. So we go on create stack with new resources, basically the standard way of doing it. I will upload a template file. I have a template file on my desktop here that I'm going to be using. So UA meetup, not that one, this one, test AML. There we go. This is, and it says, okay, it's if the code was wrong, if I mistyped something or use bad syntax, it would complain here. Cool. Click next. Define a stack name. This is something we need to define. Let's call it single instance Ukraine. Right. And then finally, parameters. You remember the parameters I said, the instance sizes? I told you can do T3 micro and T3 small. So for example, let's stick with T3 micro, but also key pairs. I can define which key pair to use. I'm going to be using my Darko EU West key because this is being launched within EU West. Click next, scroll all the way down, click next again. There's a lot of clicks here as well, but yeah, it's just for a single instance. Go back down and finally create stack. What this will do, it will create that single EC2 instance for me, right? With all the configuration things we have defined within our little configuration file here. Great, neat. Okay, now you may come to me and say, okay, Darko, you've been doing this for a while, right? You've been coding and you have some magic that types this all out, right? Where do I figure all of these things out? How do I get to doing what I want to do? I can always point you to the documentation, right? So you can always go to AWS CloudFormation, for example, CloudFormation not registry, but docs. You will find like the entire resource and property documentation here with all of the resources available. So you see on the left-hand side here, you can find all of these wonderful resources that are available for you to use and create and a bunch of other things. Like for example, a code commit repository. Here's the syntax, here are the parameters. Yeah, but there's a lot of that. There's a whole lot of this. And sometimes it can be very much complicated to do. Let me give you a little life hack here. Open up your Visual Studio Code. Now I'm going to be using this as an example. I think there's a similar thing to like Atom, but I have this as an example. You can go and install an extension called AWS CloudFormation. This is the one. Once you install this entire extension on top of VS Code, you can go ahead and create a new file. Let me close this off. I'm going to select the language here called just YAML, right? There you go. And if I do the following, if I do start, type start, you will see there's something happening. There's a suggestion for me. Bam. It creates a skeleton for a CloudFormation template for me, right? It includes like all of the things we need, the metadata, the parameters. Well, you may not need all of that, but for example, metadata, parameters, mapping, conditions, resources, outputs, all of these things are being created automatically for you. Let's remove a couple of things here. Let's not do parameters. Let's just do resources. You want to create an EC2 instance, right? You can go to the console and you can go to the documentation and figure all of that out. Or EC2 instance. Check out the first entry. Blam. Amazing. It generates all of these things for you, right? Let me redo that and do that. Call it EC2. I need to do something here. Move it up a bit. Right. So it creates the skeleton of what you need here, right? Now, you don't need all of these parameters, but this is kind of one of the baselines you can do, right? You know, setting up your key names, image IDs, instance types, all of these things for you, right? You want to do something more complex? You want to do something like I don't know, an RDS database? You can just do RDS database instance. Well, bam. That's it. It's a really, really neat way to get started and to do this for you. This is just wonderful. I advise anybody who's starting out with AWS CloudFormation to check this thing out. It's just a great way to do this stuff. One more thing I want to show you. Let me see if I can do this easily. Because I don't see my screen here the best. Do I have it here? Okay. For all the Chrome and I think even Firefox users out there, if you find an extension here. Now, this extension is not being created or endorsed by AWS. It's created by this wonderful gentleman called Ian McKay. And Ian has created this amazing extension called, what is it? Console Recorder. This will blow you away. I'm overselling it here, but check it out. So Console Recorder, I'm adding this extension to here, right? Okay, it's going to be installing this extension here. That's fine. And let's go to actually, for example, let's go to, I don't know, EC2. All right. The thing that Console Recorder can do for you, it can actually record what you click and convert it to fun things. So let's do this. Console Recorder, start recording. Boom. Okay, it's recording. Launch instance, launch instance. I'm going to be using, for example, let's do something else. Let's do Windows. Why not? Windows. I'm going to choose a different type of server. I'm going to be using like a T3 large in this case. Instance details, I'm going to leave this all. I'm going to set up an IAM role. Doesn't really matter. I'm just adding new things here just so we can add more stuff. The volume is going to be 30 gig. Let's do 45 gigabytes, please. I'm not going to be doing any tags, and I'm going to be selecting the user group, the security group that I have, the default one. Boom, boom. Finally, launch, select a key pair, this one, that one, launch. What Console Recorder has done right now, if I go here and say stop recording, it has produced some code. It actually creates some CloudFormation templates for you. It will create a CloudFormation snippet based on what you did. Now, it's not 100% correct and accurate, but it will give you the essence of what you want to do. So you can see that it defines an instance, like a specific AMI ID with a security group and all those things. You can basically just take this, copy, paste it into your proper template and do something with it as well. So an excellent way, if you know how to click through your console, but you really need that CloudFormation code, great way to kind of get started. Not all resources are supported. Not everything you do is supported here, but it will get you somewhere close to it. Okay, now I want to show you something as well. You remember that almost epic fail that I had with the horrible alias I had? What that thing has done. So if I go here and do vim and open up my ZSH, I'm not going to do hello Ukraine. It's going to be hello. This was actually a little API call, basically an AWS CLI call to create a CloudFormation template. Actually, CloudFormation stack. If I go to my AWS console, go back to CloudFormation, and check out, there is a template, right? There's a stack called Zdravo Ukraina. It's hello Ukraine in Serbian. It created a bunch of things for me. This template created a fully fledged, highly available and scalable web cluster, right? It has created an auto-scaling group with a load balancer in front with all the auto-scaling policies. And what it does, it actually created this lovely website, if it works perfectly. It does. As you can see, it has created a little website running somewhere on top of AWS in a fully highly scalable manner. It's available right now on the internet. If you want to try to try to type that URL, it should work for you. And it has been successfully launched. It has created multiple elements. It has actually created it has created 11 different resources. For me to do this by hand, it will take me at least an hour or so. So instead of spending an hour just clicking through the console, SSHing into a server, copying some files, doing this and that, I launched a single command with a template that I had prepared before, and it has given me back the time to talk to you instead of, looking at the template. And you can see here, create complete, it says it's done. So saved me a bunch of time so I can spend it with you, the lovely audience from the AWS user group in Ukraine. With that being said, let's go back to the slides. And I'm going to slowly wrap up. And I'm not sure if I can get any questions from you all, but if you can, that would be great. Number one, books are important. If you want to check out a great book on infrastructure as code on top of AWS, This book by a gentleman called Brandley Campbell is wonderful. Now, it goes through your CloudFormations, it goes through Terraform, it goes through CDK, and the book is literally 60% code. So it's a wonderful thing. I would always advise to people who are starting with infrastructure as code, be that CloudFormation or Terraform, to check this book out. Code is important. If you want some examples of the code I've used today, you can go there on my GitHub page. There's a repository called Do Awesome Things with AWS CloudFormation. There's a bunch of snippets. It's not a lot, but if you want to check out the things I've been typing today, and actually the code that launched that website, the Hello Ukraine one, check it out as well. So if you want to go there, github.com, Darko-Meszaros, and you will find all of the stuff there. And also, blogs are important. I like to blog from time to time. I've written actually a blog post. This is part 1 of Do Awesome Things with Infrastructure as Code. It's not CloudFormation specific, but if you want to read more about infrastructure as code and how you can benefit from it and how it will suit you, I've included a bunch of examples there, some code snippets as well. So check it out. It's on my personal blog. There's a lot of other posts there. So if you want to check it out, I would be happy to have you there. So, wrap up. A couple of takeaways. And I want you to remember this, and this is the things you should know. Number 1, get into infrastructure as code early, right? It doesn't matter if you have a single instance, a single database, a single web server, or a single application. It will help you manage that scale in the long run, right? I had people, oh, it's just a single instance. Oh, it's just an S3 bucket. Oh, and that grows. And all of a sudden, at one point, like, oh boy, we've created all of these things and we haven't done it in CloudFormation or infrastructure as code. What do we do? Yeah, so start easy. Even if it's a single resource, again, just keep on adding to your templates, keep on expanding that. It's going to be much more manageable. Also, if you want to migrate accounts, it's very easy like this. Just recreate everything in a different account. Treat infrastructure as code as any other code, right? So it's code. It's nothing special. It's not something that's unique. Use pipelines, use Git, use SVN, use any sort of version control system, pipeline, testing, tooling out there to help you write amazing code. I've shown you a couple of examples in VS Code, the plugins. I've shown you how you can record the code, kind of. So use all of that and treat this code like any good code. If you check out the blog post, I actually mentioned a couple of tools out there that can help you. And I've been speaking a lot about this. So there's a bunch of tools for CloudFormation, Terraform, CDK out there that can help you test your code, run it through some unit tests and all that stuff. And finally, use the best tools that fit your needs, right? I have talked about AWS CloudFormation here because it's just wonderful. There's other infrastructure as code frameworks out there. There's the wonderful Terraform. There is the Cloud Development Kit, CDK. There is Pulumi. There is Ansible if you want these as well, right? So it doesn't matter as long as you use it. It is very important, right? They say the best programming language is the one you know. So the one which suits you the best, just use that. And finally, if you remember, when CloudFormation creates a template, it gives you this little piece of feedback saying, hey, create complete. This has been a success. I want you to tell me, has this been a success? Please let me know. Did you like this presentation? Did you enjoy what I showed? Do you like the content? Am I too loud? Am I too bald? Whatever. Let me know. I really want to know if you like this. I want to improve on my presentation. I want to improve on what I do and how we present stuff for you. So go on that link, on that QR code, whatever. Just give me your thoughts. I really want to hear them. With that being said, Dziękuję. Thank you. I think I said that right. Thank you very much. Dziękuję. It has been a pleasure to talk to you all. And if there are any questions, or if I can get them somehow, I don't know, please shoot them my way.
Yeah, thank you, Darko, for this amazing speech. So,
thank you.
So let's go to the question. And remind you, the best question will get a prize. Yeah, and guys, please add your names when you're asking some question, because it would be super hard to give a prize to some anonymous.
Exactly.
Yeah, so our first question is, there any benefits of using CloudFormation rather than Terraform? Yeah, and the second part. So far, CloudFormation gives visualize builder of infra components. Is there anything else?
So when it comes to choosing between Terraform or CloudFormation, my answer is yes. It doesn't matter which one you're using. Now, if we're looking for details of why is CloudFormation potentially better than Terraform, or why is Terraform better than CloudFormation, there are a couple of points, right? Number one, Terraform has wonderful syntax. It's just a pleasure to read and write, right? It's just great. Not a fan of CloudFormation syntax. It's JSON and YAML, but yeah. However, CloudFormation has a much more tighter integration with Amazon Web Services. So if you're using AWS, if you're building things on top of AWS, it is much more easier to do it with CloudFormation, especially when we take into account like state files, right? State management. When it comes to state management on Terraform, you need to ensure that you're writing it to an S3 bucket or DynamoDB table or doing any of those things. And if you ever had to deal with a broken state file, you know how that is. On CloudFormation, it's a much more seamless approach for that. So my answer here would be much more tighter integration with AWS services.
Okay, thank you. So next one is, when do you prefer to go with CloudFormation and when with CDK?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of CDK, right? Cloud Development Kit is a framework that enables you to use generic programming languages, your Pythons, your TypeScript, your JavaScripts, your Javas, your C Sharps, all of those things, and write your infrastructure as code. I found that, and by the way, CDK is using CloudFormation. CDK is actually generating CloudFormation. So, however, CDK can be, you do not know exactly what CDK does when it does it. Right? You can generate the CloudFormation template and look at it, what it's done. But with CloudFormation, you have much more tighter control of what you are actually creating and how you're creating it, right? Because in CDK assumes a lot of defaults, right? If you do it's very easy to create, for example, a VPC in CDK, just a single line of code. It takes a lot more on CloudFormation, but it takes a lot more effort. So my advice here would be if you are not a developer, if you're struggling with the concepts of program languages, your classes, your functions, all of those things, it may be easier to get into infrastructure as code with CloudFormation. However, if you're amazing in Python or in JavaScript or Java or any of the languages supported, CDK may be for you. And I'm a fan of both, so I cannot really pin them against each other.
Okay, thanks. Next one, what should happen so that AWS start pushing people to not use CloudFormation, but rather developer-friendly alternative? I mean, AWS CDK or Terraform.
I mean, is the question is what needs to happen for AWS to start pushing people away from CloudFormation?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to happen, right? Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. We're not going to be pushing people away from CloudFormation because, again, CDK relies on CloudFormation. CDK is not something that's super special. It just generates CloudFormation for you in a really neat way. So don't expect that we will tell you, oh, please don't use CloudFormation, right? Use whatever suits you the best. And I know CDK is just super sexy. It's amazing. It just gets things done. But trust me, some people prefer CloudFormation, and that's just that's fine.
Okay. What the biggest problem in AWS CloudFormation from your point of view?
From my point of view, the biggest problem is templates get really complex after a while, right? Especially if you build properly built infrastructures and templates with a lot of parameters, a lot of conditions, a lot of those things. They get really complex after a while. And that's my major gripe with CloudFormation because it just takes a lot of time to do all of those things. CDK kind of fixes some of that stuff because it does it all for you. It generates all of these things for you. But my biggest problem with CloudFormation is, for example, let me show you. Oh, can you share my screen once again, by the way? I would like to show something to people here. Thank you. So let me actually show you a little template that I have here. And let me do here, and then so this is the template that creates this web thing, like this big, highly available web cluster, right? It has 650 lines of code. If I go and search for index, for example, you should not be doing this, but here's an example of creating a text file on disk with CloudFormation. You have to use a lot of like these things, like joins and YAML, and this even looks even worse when we do it in JSON, right? Of course, this is not the way you should be creating your index HTML files. But sometimes doing more complex things like user data or things like this can be a bit finicky, right? You have to bake it into your template. So that's kind of my biggest problem here.
Okay, thanks. And next one, what the advantages of using load balancer instead of using ingress controllers?
So what would I say? I don't know. I haven't played with ingress controllers, to be honest. Like load balancers help you balance load between multiple different resources. There's different types of load balancers. There's network load balancers, application load balancers, and the classic ones. I don't know about the ingress controllers. Haven't dove deep into them, so I cannot really say from authority is it good or bad. But most applications running on top of AWS, be them in containers or even just your serverless applications, they're sitting behind application load balancers.
Okay, and I guess the last one is how to migrate CloudFormation if you to CloudFormation if you already have created like a lot of resources.
So there is a way you can import existing resources to CloudFormation. However, you would need to write those resources, write the definition of those resources. The little tool I showed you called Console Recorder basically records what you click when you create. There is a tool called Former2. So Former2. If you search for Former2, it's a tool created by the same gentleman, Ian McKay, that basically can scan your account. You give it read-only access to the account. It scans the account within the browser and just finds the resources you have, and it can generate CloudFormation templates for them. It's not a 100% accurate. It's not being made by AWS, but that's a really neat way to kind of get you started on that. So number one, you need to create a CloudFormation template for existing resources. Basically define those resources the way they are in a CloudFormation template. And then use the import function of CloudFormation to basically import existing resources into a stack. That's a way to do it. Ultimately, if you can, like for example, if you have no persistent data or something like that, just basically copy everything into a template, create a brand new template, and just launch fresh infrastructure. That would be my suggestion, because it's easy.
Yeah, and questions still appearing. I found one very good, how to debug actually, and how find some error in CloudFormation configuration file.
So there is a couple of tools out there that can help you with writing your CloudFormation templates. VS Code, when you install the plugin called CloudFormation, it actually installs another little bit of code called CFN lint. CloudFormation linter. Now, linter is basically going to go through your CloudFormation template and give you the, hey, this doesn't work. This will not be good. It actually checks the code against the spec, like the CloudFormation spec. Is this fine? Is this a correct instance size you can use, etc., etc.? And it will give you the suggestion saying, hey, you should fix this. Second tool, and this is more for like making good templates. It's made by Stelligent. It's called CFN nag. If you run CFN nag against the template, it will actually tell you if your template is good or bad from a security perspective, right? It will look into like, oh, hey, you have security groups open. Why are you sure you want to do that? And those kind of things. So those are two little tools that can help you out with that. But it actually, a lot of that is baked into VS Code with the plugin. So just start there. And for some things, unfortunately, you have to actually try to launch a template. It's just, It just has to try to create things. For example, if you're trying to launch an instance and you have no more limits, if you reach the limit basically on the number of instances you can have, CloudFormation doesn't know that until it tries. So for some things, you really have to just try to launch
it. Okay. Also, very good question. There are any tool solution how to convert Terraform to CloudFormation and vice versa?
I don't know of any, to be honest. They really use different types of resource definitions, so I haven't seen any good resource how to do it. So I'm sorry. I wish there was, to be honest. I wish there was like a tool that you can just flip between the two. It will help, the people who want to use Terraform and people who want to use CloudFormation. But alas, I don't know of one. However, if you use AWS Cloud Development Kit, CDK can actually create Terraform. So there's a project called CDK TF. It's actually made by HashiCorp. Basically, you can use CDK to generate Terraform files. So amazing.
Okay, so I guess there is good time to pick up best question, which you like more.
Okay, which I like the most. I like the one about debugging CloudFormation. So I think that one is a really nice one. So thank you, anybody who asked that one, because it's important. Again, you need to treat your CloudFormation code, your infrastructure code, as any other code. So you need to debug it. You need to test it out before you just blindly send it out into the world.
Okay. Probably, yeah, we have some time for the additional question.
Okay.
Okay, so can I delete created stack of the resource with the CloudFormation template?
I'm not sure if I understand. So you want to delete existing resources with a CloudFormation template? If they are imported in a template in a stack, and then you delete the stack, you can. CloudFormation cannot just delete random resources. They need to be managed by the existing stack to be able to be deleted. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other questions, so probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, just reach out to me directly. I am happy to answer. You have my social media stuff and all LinkedIn, YouTube's, Twitters, whatever. My messages are open.
We also share all links in the description of our presentation, and also we are sent email later with the records and all useful links there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Darko. It was a pleasure to watch your presentation.
Thank you very much for having me.